Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our virtual Meet the Expert session. My name is David and I'm part of the My World of Work Live team with Skills Development Scotland. My World of Work Live is about helping you to understand what the jobs of Scotland in the future are going to require and to help you get the skills you need for them. So in today's session, we're going to cover a quick overview of the engineering sector. We're going to look at some opportunities within the sector. I'm going to introduce you to our expert for today, Bethany Ross. Sadly, Matthew Montgomery is unable to join us today, and allow you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have. I would encourage you to get involved as much as possible, so please use the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen to ask us questions. As we go through it, we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. I would just like to let you know that today's session is being recorded so that young people who could not make it today can still access the resources. It will be available for everybody to watch on the My World of Work Live playlist on the My World of Work YouTube channel. This means you can go back and rewatch everything that's been talked about today as many times as you like. If you're feeling a bit shy, don't worry. Everything you ask today can be anonymous and you can select that option on the question and answer box. So just before I introduce you to today's expert, let's have a look at some of the labour market information around the engineering sector. So the average salary for the engineering sector is around 43,160. And as we can see for the next graphic, the UK employment, full-time employment tends to be around 60%, with 27% being part-time and the remaining 13% being self-employed. So there's many routes into engineering. You can get into engineering through college, university, modern apprenticeships, and even graduate apprenticeships. Engineering tends to be a sector that is underrepresented for women, and the sector is actively encouraging women into that sector. So right now, let me introduce you to Bethany Ross from Booth Welsh and let her tell you a little about herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Bethany and I am a process engineer. So as David said, I work for Booth Welsh, who are an engineering and technology business based in Irvine, which is in Ayrshire. We have been in operation for around 31 years and have a workforce of about 280 people. Our parent company is the Clough Group, whose head office is based in Australia. So Booth Welsh, what we do is we provide engineering solutions for our clients who operate within the process industries. So these industries include pharmaceuticals, chemical and life sciences, oil and gas, nuclear power industries, and the food and beverage industry as well. So Booth Welsh have a multidisciplinary team that consists of process engineers, mechanical and piping engineers, electrical and instrumentation engineers, control systems engineers, and a panel building team. So this team of engineers work together to deliver different solutions to meet our clients' needs. So as you can see, we need a lot of different types of engineers. Booth Welsh also provide digitalisation solutions to businesses. So we use technology such as augmented and virtual reality, and we've even employed people from the gaming industry to achieve this. As well as these roles, we also need people in roles such as project management, HR, finance, marketing and commercial roles to be a successful business. So it isn't all just about engineering. So a bit about me. I left school in 2012 and I went straight down the university route. So I went to the University of Strathclyde, which is in Glasgow, and there I studied chemical and process engineering. So I graduated in 2017 after 5 years of study with a master's degree. During my time at university, I also worked over the summer, or the different summers, to gain some work experience that was relevant to my studies and to help boost my CV a little bit. So in my third year of university, I took on the role of a research intern, which was a paid internship within the chemical and process engineering department. And there I carried out some lab-based projects over 10 weeks, which involved researching different solutions to a water pollution problem. So this involved a lot of chemistry experiments, and then I had to write a report and present my findings to my advisor in the wider department. And I also had to create a poster to present to other departments in the university. After 4th year, I worked as a health and safety intern at Edinburgh Airport, which was really interesting because I got to see how a large airport operates day to day and all the potential hazards that there are to passengers and staff throughout the airport. And some of the processes that I got to see was the baggage handling side of things and how baggage is transferred from the desk to the aeroplane, how the parking bays for planes are scheduled, and the operations at the on-site fire station, etc. I also got to take part in some projects to make some of these processes at the airport a little bit safer, which was really interesting. And then in my final year of university, I had to complete a master's project, which is kind of like a dissertation. And I was lucky enough to be given the opportunity to do this in Valencia, Spain. So I moved out there for 3 months, and that was via the Erasmus exchange programme. So I worked in a research facility at the Universitat Politécnica de Valencia. Hopefully I got that right. And again, this was all research based, and so again I was working in a lab, had to carry out experiments, but this time I was experimenting on a novel catalyst to determine how well it worked with certain chemicals. I then had to write a report detailing my experimental works and findings and then present it when I got back to Scotland to my advisor over here. So that was a really fun experience because I got to live in a new city in a completely different country. I got to attend some of their big festivals because the Spanish love big crazy festivals. And I also got to go to the beach after a hard day at work, which the weather was a lot nicer than it is down here in Irvine. So after graduation in 2017, I joined the Booth Welsh graduate scheme and was placed in the process engineering department, where I still work today. So what does a process engineer actually do? So for us, normally, so we work for a range of clients, as I said, across different industries. And normally the client would come to us with a problem or design brief. So that might be that the client wants to make a new product, change the product they make, but use the same equipment. They might want to make more of their product, change the way they make it, or make the process more efficient and use less resources or energy. So the product in question could range from anything. So it could be medicine, it could be chocolate, petrol, toothpaste, or even generating the power that you use to charge your phone. It's then my job or the job of the process engineer to understand, okay, how's the product made? What's it made from? Like, what are the raw materials that you use? How much of the raw materials do you need? And then you need to consider, okay, are all the materials mixed together at once, or are they added at different stages of the process? What is the chemical reaction? Does the process, does it need to be heated or does it need to be cooled down? Okay, how do I actually achieve that? Because we're talking about thousands of litres of the product, for example. So it's much scaled up from a laboratory-based process. So then I also have to think about, okay, well, maybe it needs to be transferred from one end of the plant to the other, and that could be like over 100 metres. So how do we actually do that without touching the product or contaminating it? And then once we've identified all these things, we need to work out what equipment is actually needed and how big it all needs to be. So you could be talking about 10,000 litres of product, for example, which is rather a lot. Then we need to think about the materials in the equipment. Is this going to affect the product in any way? Is it going to affect the quality? If it's chocolate, for example, will it affect the taste? And is the equipment that I've identified the most efficient for the job, or are we going to be wasting a lot of energy by using it? Then going back to before, if it needs heated, where am I going to get the heat from? Or if it's cooled, how am I going to do that? And then we need to think about how safe the process is actually going to be for the people working at the site and operating it every day. So will the materials reach really high temperatures that could seriously burn someone? Or will the equipment withstand the pressure of the process? Could it explode? So we always have to think about how we can make the process safer. So as you can see, the engineer needs to be able to do a lot of problem solving, analysis and calculations to work all this out. So to do that, we also need to collaborate with the other engineering disciplines I mentioned earlier, so that the work they're doing lines up with ours and the process works the way it's meant to. So at the end of the day, we have to make sure that the client can make the right quantity and quality of product that they need. So I did work in the main design office at our head office in Irvine, or during COVID times I've been working from home. However, I've also had to don my high-vis jacket and hard hat, safety boots, and physically walk around the site, understanding the process that I'm working on, speaking to the people who work there and learn a bit about the process. So aside from problem solving skills, etc., to be a good engineer, you also need to be good at working as part of a team, communicating, showing leadership, being organised and being good at multitasking. So thank you for listening. I'll pass you back to David now.
Okay, so we've got a few questions in. Some of them you have answered already, actually.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. You're obviously preempting what people are going to be asking you. So one of the first questions we've got is, what would you expect me to do or get in my 4th year towards engineering? So I'm assuming this is the 4th year towards getting into engineering.
Okay, so I suppose it depends what kind of engineering you want to do and what kind of route you want to go down, because there's a lot of different routes into engineering. So if you want to get your degree, then you probably need to get the grades that will allow you to take higher maths, English, and 2 sciences, and possibly another subject like computing. So is it National Fives now? Yeah, sorry, hires back in my day. Yeah, so just the marks that you need to get into those subjects. But if you want to become an engineer, like through an apprenticeship, for example, I think you need to have English, maths, and a physics or science qualification. And a good school record to get onto the apprenticeship programme at Booth Welsh, for example.
Okay. That actually leads on to another question, which was, do Booth Welsh take on apprenticeships straight from school?
Yes, they do. So the Booth Welsh apprenticeship is a 4-year course, and they look for people with higher maths and higher physics or a relevant HNC degree. And just because of the nature of our clients, they preferably take on 18 plus, because you need certain levels to get onto the sites. However, I think they'll look at something like a good student, slightly younger as well.
Okay. Can you describe the recruitment process that you went through to get your current role?
Yes. So I sent in my CV to the company, and I first went in to meet the process engineering manager, and I had a formal interview with them, and then I had to go back and do another formal interview with the director of engineering and the head of HR. But I know for other companies you also have to do maths assessments, problem solving assessments, things like that as well. So it just changes, but the process I went through was purely interview.
Okay. What is the best way to figure out what kind of engineering I want to do?
So first of all, there's lots of different types of engineering out there. So I would research as many of them as you can, and decide which ones sound interesting to you. So I'd maybe research the kind of subject matters that they cover and try and link them up with the subjects that you enjoy doing. So for example, most engineers use physics, but the physics used by a particular discipline might be completely different to another. So I know I didn't really enjoy the electrical side of physics, but I enjoyed other parts of it, so it's not necessarily the full subject that you'll do at university. It might just be parts of it. So yeah, I would definitely do as much research as possible and just see if it aligns to the subjects that you enjoy doing at school.
Okay. What sort of questions would you get asked in a engineering interview?
That's a good one. A few years ago now. So I guess you do quite a lot of the competency type engineering questions. So maybe, for example, like how well do you work in a team? Can you give me an example? Just can you give me a time where you were put under pressure or stress and how you dealt with it? I'm trying to think of other ones. Yeah, just all those kind of competency based ones. And then also they like you to talk a lot about your experiences. So what kind of work experience have you had and how does that relate to the job that you're going to do? And then obviously you'll have your technical questions as well, just to make sure that you do know what you're talking about. So it's always good to brush up on your general engineering knowledge as well.
Excellent. So what different types of engineers at Booth Welsh, and what do they do and what are the differences between them?
Okay, so I told you about process engineers, but you also have the mechanical and piping engineers. Hopefully I don't offend anyone by trying to describe what they do, but so the mechanical and piping engineers, so like I said before, sometimes you have to transfer chemicals from one side of a plant to the other, and usually it's not just a straight line. They've got to go around lots of different equipment, and the way that they do that is through pipes. Like you get to deliver your water to your house and stuff. So the piping engineer will work out the route and the size of the pipe and all the structures that are needed to hold it in place. The mechanical engineer can be involved with, like I said, the materials. They have to make sure the materials are the right specifications so that you don't get the product contaminated. You've got electrical engineers. So one thing that you could, for example, you would use to transfer a chemical is a pump, for example, and to run that equipment you need electricity. So it's their job to wire everything up and make sure it works properly and work out how much electrical load you need for all these pieces of equipment on the plant and make sure you've got enough capability to do that. We've also got instrumentation engineers. So I spoke of before about making sure that the temperatures and pressures on the plant don't go really high and make sure everything's safe. So to do that, you have instruments, so things like temperature transmitter, which is kind of a device that measures the temperature of the fluid or the pressure within the vessel. So the instrumentation engineers specify all that and make sure that that all works properly and is suitable again for the product. And then the control system engineers, so when you've got a big massive plant, there's things on it which are called valves, which you can use to route the fluid in different directions, for example, or stop it from running or start it running. And you don't really want someone running around trying to turn all the valves at the right time and doing everything at once. So the control systems engineers actually code the system so that it all works automatically at the press of a button on a screen in a control room maybe 50 metres away from the actual process.
Excellent. That's a lot of engineers. That's a very wide skill base.
Yeah.
So we've actually got quite a few more questions coming in, but we'll get through as many as we can. So one of the questions is, what do you think made you stand out against the other candidates for the role that you now work in?
That's a good question again.
Or what do you think would make somebody stand out in a role if they were applying for it?
Yeah, I think it's always good to have experiences that you can go back and talk about, because I think skills are a really important part of being an engineer. So, for example, I did a few summer internships, which gave me kind of life experience and a better understanding of how big companies operate. So being able to talk about that and demonstrating the kind of work that I did was relevant to the job I was going into really helped. And also having the right qualifications is obviously very important as well. But I think at the end of the day, yeah, it's just as long as you have the technical ability, but you also have the team building, or sorry, the team player, organisational skills, communication skills, then that will probably set you apart.
So having examples that you can talk about, like internships or work experience or foundation apprenticeships or things like that you might do in school.
Definitely, but also as well, which I didn't mention, being able to talk about like maybe your hobbies as well. So, for example, I played ultimate frisbee in football, so being able to talk about that and how you worked as a team there and the leadership you maybe did as part of that team is really important as well. So, yeah, the work experience and the technical abilities are really important, but also your hobbies and stuff are just as important, I would say, as well.
Excellent. So did you see any differences working between Spain and Scotland? Any different work practices? How did they relate compared to each other, the differences?
It's quite a difficult one because I only worked in a research facility, so it could have been different to anywhere else, but I think they did work longer hours. However, they took more breaks. So we had a coffee break. We went started at 9, then coffee break at 10, and then a lunch break. So they do like to sit and like discuss things over coffee and food, which I wasn't complaining about. But then you've also got the sunshine like up until quite late at night, so it's quite nice to be able to go out and after work and enjoy that for a wee while.
Excellent. What skills have you developed whilst working at Booth Welsh?
That's a good one as well. I've definitely developed my communication skills and working as part of a team, and I've also found that I've had to be a really quick learner because we work across lots of different industries, so a lot of different companies have different standards that you need to follow, and trying to get your head around that and learning it really quickly is probably one of the main skills that I've developed being there. And I'm also part of the STEM team at Booth Welsh, so we go out to schools and talk about our jobs and do practical activities. So I'm one of the coordinators for that, so I've definitely learned how to balance it all, the organisational skills and also the leadership skills that are required to do that.
Excellent. We've got a question that I'm quite interested to hear the answer to, which is you mentioned augmented reality. How is that used at Booth Welsh?
So unfortunately, I've not really been that involved with it, but from what I understand, so on a site, for example, like when I was talking about the instrumentation, you need to do maintenance on a site. So normally what happens is if there's something wrong, like usually the engineer has to phone up to the control room and ask them to do X, Y, and Z. But now you can wear glasses, and you can pull up manuals and logs. So it's like sitting in front of you while you're maintaining the piece of equipment. And then that means that you're not having to carry lots of paper about with you. You can phone the person through Teams, for example, and they'll just be there as if they're right next to you, talking you through how to do things. So that's my understanding of it.
That's quite impressive, actually.
Yeah, it is impressive.
So another question we've had in is, what advice would you give someone wanting to become an engineer?
Again, like I said before, there are lots of different types, as I mentioned. So yeah, just do your research. go, if you can, like go to as many open days as you can, try and hear about them, try and speak to people who have done the courses before, so you know what to expect. But also, you also don't need to have a degree to be an engineer, so there's lots of other pathways. So for example, at Booth Welsh we offer electrical apprenticeship roles and graduate level apprenticeship roles where you can work and study at the same time. So a few people in the company have gone down that path and they have become really successful in their jobs. And also, engineering companies don't just need engineers either, so you don't necessarily need to be an engineer to join an engineering company.
Excellent. So somebody obviously very interested in how engineers work, and they're asking, do you work weekends?
My role is typically 9 to 5 in the office, but it all depends on the client's needs. So there has been sometimes where we've had to do commissioning, which is after we've designed the process, you then need to go and install it and make sure it all works properly in the way it's meant to, and that can take quite a long time. So there's been a few, a lot of documents and stuff need updated as well. So there's been a few times, not a lot, only like a couple, but had to work over the weekends just to get that done on time. And then as well, if you're perhaps helping a client with their shutdown, so their shutdown period is normally about 2 weeks, and that's 2 weeks, 7 days a week. So you could be on to work for weekends for that as well. So it just depends.
Excellent. So we've got another question, and this is, are there many women working at Booth Welsh?
Yes, I don't have a number to hand, but I would say the biggest representation in the engineering is definitely the process and chemical engineering department. And I think that's reflected in the number of students that do chemical and process engineering. It is slightly higher than the other disciplines. But we also have other females who work in project management, for example, marketing, the commercial side of the business as well.
Excellent. So what's the best bit about your job?
The best bit about my job is probably the fact that I can work in a lot of different industries. So I don't need to just focus on one. I get to see how different industries work, and that means I can learn a lot more with my job. I also have been lucky enough to go and work on a client site as well, so that was really interesting because it meant that I wasn't just in the office all the time, and I actually had to go and dig a little deeper around the site to see how things work, and it helped me understand the process a lot more, being able to do that, and I got to meet a lot of new people as well.
Excellent. So we'll ask you one last question. What is the worst part about your job?
Oh God. That's a hard one. Don't really know if there's a worst part to my job.
Well, in
Again,
that case,
sorry.
on you go.
No, I was just going to say, I guess it's the same thing that you have to learn. Some people probably would find that quite difficult, but I quite enjoy it. So.
Thank you very much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me.
Well, that's us come to the end of the session. I would like to say a big thank you to Bethany for taking the time to join us today and give us an insight into her role at Booth Welsh. I certainly hope you found it interesting. I thought the information about their use of virtual reality was very interesting. And I feel that the conversation gave me a very clear idea about the sector, not just of process engineering, but the other kind of engineering sectors that Booth Welsh are involved in. If you need information, advice, or guidance, what you can do is you can talk to your careers advisor in your school, and they will have more information for you. You can also find more about careers on My World of Work. You'll find lots of information there that can help you make choices about your career. So if you're interested in different kinds of engineering or finding out more about some of the kinds of engineering that were discussed here today, there's job profiles on there that would allow you to read more about those particular areas. Also, there are tools there to help you identify your strengths and the strengths that you may have that would help you in some of these careers. As mentioned earlier, this video, along with other expert sessions, will be added to the My World of Work YouTube channel under the My World of Work Live playlist, and you can rewatch them there to see all this information again. You can also check out apprenticeship.scot, and apprenticeship.scot will have Scottish apprenticeships on there and different kinds of engineering, and it will tell you about graduate, foundation, graduate and modern apprenticeships, and it's updated on a regular basis. Finally, thanks again to Bethany for joining the session. Take care and have a lovely day.